Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us physically as well. And let's get right into the presentation. My name is Rohit. I'm the Associate Director for University Relations and Outreach at Univassist. And I've got two beautiful ladies here as my co panelists. I'm going to let them introduce themselves and then we'll begin.
Hi. Good afternoon, I guess, in India, and good morning from the Republic of Panama. My name is Jenny Tassel. I am the Director of College Counseling at the International School of Panama, where I've been for the last 3 years. But I've been working in college counseling for about 13 years in Panama.
Hello, my name is Susi Urruela. I work as the College Counseling Director for Abde Schools Guatemala. It's a group of IB schools located in Guatemala City. And I've been a college counselor since 2015. And welcome all.
Great. Thank you very much, Susie and Jenny. So the topic of the session is taking reins, organizing your own virtual career fair. So I'm just going to give a small introduction on what the session is all about. I know this last 1.5 year has been very difficult on a lot of high schools, not being able to host students or host universities on campus. So we'll really talk about how schools can be empowered to really organize their own sessions and take charge of that. We'll share some case studies. Can we have the presentation slide up, please? Super. Thank you very much. So yeah, I mean, as I said, we have been seeing a lot of challenges since last year, and university representatives typically who used to visit multiple schools across the globe are now grounded and not being able to visit high schools or meet with your students. And so is the case for a lot of high schools who are not able to visit or host universities who were typically used to hosting 200, 300 universities. And this is due to all the country level quarantines, all the advisories, the travel bans, school managements, etc. And there is definitely a very uncertainty around when this would resume, when things would go back to normal, when high schools would be open to having visitors on campus. But that being said, the need to keep students focused remains at the core of it. Since last year, I think there have been students who have not even visited schools for the last 1.5 year, but are still continuing to learn online, and that's very critical to really counsel them to find the right institution, right career choices, right programs, and we'll talk a little about how high schools could do that, and how we can really empower them. Um, a little snapshot on how COVID has really impacted high schools, and we do have some statistics from UNESCO that has talked about mid-April 2020 when we had almost 82% of the world school population that was affected due to COVID, and we had school closures in over 167 countries. As of today, the numbers are about 110. So there are still a lot of schools which have not resumed completely, still relying heavily on virtual learning and e-learning or classrooms. However, there definitely has been some challenges around access to technology and resources, especially in some of the underprivileged countries or schools with not as much resources. So that has been a very very challenging situations for high schools. The border closures have also affected international student mobility. Students who were scheduled to be on campus could not go there. Some of them pursued, their classes online, while some of them dropped out of those classes, given the financial burdens, of course. With COVID, there were a lot of financial burdens, job losses, business losses. So that has, of course, had a very drastic impact on students either dropping out of colleges or changing their plans of international education. Um, and then, of course, restructuring around examinations. There have been all sorts of cancellations, predicted grades, which have kind of affected a lot of students with their college applications and further studies. There have been changes at universities, which a lot of students were not, equipped with the information. That is of course, with all the test requirement changes, everything that went around. So that has been also affecting students. And then finally, the transition from higher education to work with COVID and all the businesses being closed down, and that has affected students transitioning from high school, or sorry, from higher education to work. However, we do want to quickly point out some of the positive changes that have been brought by COVID, I would say, since last year. It has definitely helped us connect with more universities, gotten more opportunities for students, and I can share some anecdotal information here. Typically, students who would apply to 8 to 10 universities today are applying to 17 to 20 universities. So that has obviously gotten a lot more opportunities for those students, more diverse choice of universities. Students are looking at multiple countries now. There definitely has been more parental involvement, given the technology, the online classes and everything that has been going around. It has really helped parents to be actively involved with counseling and career choices for students. Um, yes, there have been application fee waivers by universities. A lot of institutions have gone test optional, so they don't require the SAT or the ACT. Um, I think the counselors would love this and would completely agree with it. With the virtual medium, I think it has definitely taken less of your instructional time, less of your class time. Students can actually attend these events outside of their classes. So that has been a very positive change for high schools. Um, I think fewer logistics and financial transactions. So with university with high schools organizing some of these events, now all they need is an online platform. They don't have to arrange for tables or breakfast and all sorts of those things. So that has been also one of the positive change. Um, More opportunities to collaborate with schools from the region. I would say not only from the region, but also from multiple regions. I mean, today, because of the online medium or the virtual medium, high schools can actually connect or collaborate with schools from different regions. And I'll come to that later to just give one of the example of what we are doing at Unisys to kind of help them. Um, and I think a lot of students would agree with this. They have saved up on the living costs, especially at some of the east and west coast places where the cost of living has been pretty high, and students have saved up on that while taking online classes from the comfort of their home. And so that's a little about how things have changed since last year, and what have been the positives or the drawbacks, I would say. But I do want to take a moment to invite Jenny. So we will go through two case studies. These are essentially two counselors who have hosted their own virtual fair. So we'll talk a little about how they planned it, what they did, what were the benefits of hosting it. So I'm going to invite Jenny to talk a little about her event and share her perspective on this. Jenny, over to you.
Hello. Thank you so much, Rohit. All right, so the Ocean to Ocean Invitational College Fair was actually an existing fair that we had. This is now our fifth year coming up. So we were in person for about 3 years, and it was a pretty intense 3 days of workshops, networking events, then a huge fair with about 100 universities that would attend. And then we would have 17 schools from around the area bus in their students. So if you can imagine the logistics and the planning of like a year ahead, the money that had to be for all the different events that we hosted. And it was a lot of work. And so when COVID hit, I didn't even give it a second thought that we were going to have the Ocean that following year. And I just went ahead and canceled it. And actually, I was a little bit relieved because I was like, well, okay, that's not going to be as much work this year. But then I had consulted with Webby Fairs, and they had told me, you know, you could totally continue to do this and do it virtually. And I was a little apprehensive because it was so much work and planning and everything else. And I had canceled it and it had been canceled for about 6 months, but we were still about, I think, 2 or 3 months away from the start date. So we decided to bring it back, but virtually. And it was so much simpler doing it virtual. I never had to handle any of the money or never had to deal with any of the logistical aspects of it. The schools that we collaborated with were able to have their students come without having to arrange buses or anything like that. So it was so much simpler, and able to the potential of that platform and the ability to reach reps and have universities attend that could never travel to our region. So, you know, in the past couple of years, we've had different countries that have really never been on our radar come up, like Czech Republic, and a lot more students applying to the UK from Latin America, which hadn't been as common. And so this was an opportunity to then invite those reps without having to have the budget of them to travel. My initial fear was the cost, because we had always tried to keep our costs low when we were in person. But then when I had reached out to other universities, because the only cost was to the platform, and they said that the price was totally in their range because they didn't have to pay for flights or lodging or anything like that. So they actually really, really loved our budget and the platform that we used. So in the fair that we did, the Ocean to Ocean, our first year virtual, we had about 86 universities that attended, around 1,100 students, I think a little bit more. And we had decided to structure it where we had the day before, we had presentations, kind of like webinars. We call them the O2O workshops, where we had 16 different presentations in 4 different time slots. And so a student could choose from 4 different presentations in each time slot to attend. And it was amazing. We had such a good turnout for the webinars. And it also gave the students a chance to kind of have exposure to these universities before the fair, which was the next day. And together in our counselor network, which we had already been working together for years, they're able to give input of the type of universities they wanted, the type of webinars they wanted. And it really just is like a super collaborative effort. And I would say if you're going to do a virtual fair, that is a big aspect of it, is having collaboration. There's no need to do it all on your own because if it's virtual, really anyone can attend. You could even do multi-country events. So we had about 17 schools from our events. And then afterwards with the platform they shared some analytics about how many students came, how long they stayed in each booth, and everything else. And so that was really helpful to kind of understand how the students were using the platform. And I think they on average visited, correct me if I'm wrong, Rohit, but 10 universities and stayed on for an average of about 45 minutes. We chose to have the fair from 1 in the afternoon to 4 in the afternoon, which was about 3 hours. And that was more than enough to make sure that the students had time to log on. But we also had an agreement with all the schools that they would, instead of going to their last block of the day, they would go to this fair. And so we got the schools on board first. That was a really important aspect to make sure that you have buy-in from your different counselor group and schools that you're working with for this event. Rohit, could you go to the next slide, please? So I want to give some tips on if you're going to plan your own virtual fair. And I love takeaways. If I go to a conference and I can't automatically just take some things away with me and apply them right away, then I feel like I missed out on something. So I'm going to give you some great takeaways as well. But deciding on the dates is very important to make sure that you do your research. We have about 4 Jewish schools that are part of our network. And so we wanted to make sure that we were aware of their holidays that fell, because we always usually have it at the end of September, beginning October, and there's a lot of Jewish holidays there. So first we make sure that there's no conflicting holidays or national holidays. And then we check for major fairs going on in the area. There was one in Mexico right before ours. So we always coordinated with our neighbors in the area where and when those fairs were happening to make sure that there was no conflicts between universities being able to attend. And deciding the schedule, 1 to 4 worked for us because everyone bought in and there was an expectation that the students would go to the event instead of their last class. And we also did kind of a needs assessment with students when we first started planning our fair. So if you're at like step 1 and you've never done a virtual fair before, that's a good idea to just do a needs assessment to see what the students are looking for, what kind of universities they tend to apply to, and make sure that you're getting a nice range of schools. And then collaborating with schools in the region. If you don't have a network already, create one. That's what I did in Panama. I needed people to work with. Often counselors were the only ones in our schools sometimes, and it can be really lonely. And so I started our network in Panama to kind of have that collaboration, and we could lean on each other as questions arose. And that can be school-based counselors and independent counselors. There's no reason why you can't work together. Choosing the platform for me was really easy. We decided to go with Webby Fairs because we were familiar with KIC Univicist, and their ethics and the way that they did things really spoke to me, and it was a pretty easy decision for me. I did research other platforms, but one thing that I really liked is we got to choose how to share our student data, which I was really nervous for in online. And so they gave us the option, how do you feel most comfortable sharing your student data? Is it only with the universities that the students attend visit their virtual room? And so that to us was one of the reasons why it was great, because only the universities pay. So the counselors do deal with any sort of money transactions. And then creating a university list, I would recommend that you try to keep your list as diverse as possible and making sure that you don't have overwhelming regional representation. So for us, we always would get a lot of US universities, and we wanted to make sure we had enough European and US and Canadian, and also in Latin America. So that was something that was important to us, sharing the information on social media platforms, and then making sure that you have presentations that are relevant for the audience. So one takeaway is, I would say, if you're going to do this, make your own email account for the fair, because it can get very overwhelming when you are doing it from your, working at your school, when you're already getting so many emails, they can get mixed up. So ours is o20panama at gmail.com. And that's where any university rep who asks about the fair, I just send them to that email so I can keep everything in track. And that's my takeaway. Thank you so much.
Well, hello. In terms of a virtual fair, we learned so much from Ocean to Ocean and Jenny. I'm going to try to give you a little history, because I'm sure in this conference there are people who already organize fairs. Maybe you are in the first stage of organizing fairs. So I'm going to give you a little history about how the Central American College Tour came to what it is today. Abde schools decided to do their first international college fair in 2015. Our schools were not known anywhere. So the first thing I did was travel to conferences like the one you're attending to, participating in university fairs and collecting, contact information. So in 2015, we decided to do our first international fair. We invited universities, many universities. We didn't know what was going to happen. The fair was taking place in a big hotel from Guatemala City. So at the end of that big effort that began 1 year before, we ended up with around 37 international universities plus Guatemalan universities and other institutions. So for us, it was a very big success. The second year, it was the same. We began working on the fair. If the fair was in May, so we began working on it in September of the prior year, sending the save the dates on time. We had our special email for the fair. One thing that was a very success factor was going into that email daily, answering emails every day, because universities, for many of them, was their first time coming to Guatemala. So they were asking all types of questions. So daily follow-up on emails was crucial. So this 2016, we had our second Guatemalan International College Fair. And we had, I don't even remember, but we doubled the number of universities. Of course, the largest group was from the US, but we still had universities from Europe, there was a group from Russian universities. And so the fair group, we decided since the very beginning that the fair was going to be open for students, not only from our schools, but from schools from all over Guatemala. We had a good number of visitors. So in 2016, I had a group of Central American schools wanting to join the effort. So we decided to turn the ABDE International College Fair to a Central American college tour. So we started coordinating with other schools from the region. So in 2017, it was our first Central American tour. I think it was the right decision. Our regional network grew. So the Central American tour was launched in 2017. More universities decided to join the tour. The logistics was crazy, not in terms of webinars like Jenny was telling you, but in terms of coordinating, the schedule for all the countries, sending hotel information, buses, like everything. It was huge. Universities asking more questions because how to fly from Guatemala to El Salvador to Honduras. So it was big efforts. Last year, when the pandemic hit, I was like, Jenny, okay, this year, no tour. I was sad, but in a way relieved. But then I received a call from the school principal asking to turn the fair into a virtual opportunity. The Central American tour had to go on. So that day I remember going, what am I gonna do? Where do I start? How will this work? Then a call from Jenny saved me. We also researched platforms. We also did the tour with Webifairs. And the same logistics in terms of sending the save the dates, daily follow-up on emails, connecting all Central American countries. This time, no money, no money. It was free for all schools. It was free for all, free for students. The universities had to pay their participation, but it was nothing compared to traveling, hotels, and all those logistics. All 5 countries were at the same time, from 1 to 4 p.m. For all schools, that was the perfect timing because for some schools, they wanted the fair after school hours. Some schools wanted part of the fair during school hours. So from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m., the 3 hours were more than enough. And one thing that I really enjoyed is that as we were sending the save the dates to universities, parents, and students, we also were sending with enough time the registration link. So students, parents, and everybody had enough time to research the attending universities. If they already knew what they want to study, they already were, going to the universities which offered those careers. So we couldn't have that in the past. So as you can see on the slide, this year we have 163 universities from all over the world. Universities we never dreamed of having in a Central American tour. More than 2,300 students registered. The statistics remain the same. Most students remain in the platform for 45 minutes and visited an average of 10, 12 universities. It was open for students from other schools. That's our rule, because we want to reach more students for universities, but we wanted more students from other schools that never had universities visiting them attend the fair. So we have more than 25 schools attended, and from more than 10 countries. So it was not really a Central American tour. It was a Central American tour because we have all these 5 countries, but high school students from other countries also benefited from this opportunity. So this is a little history of our tour, and some benefits of doing a virtual fair is that you're the host. So you own the event. You can choose how to present your school, the way you want to present it, the logos you want to use. As I said before, for the schools, there was no cost involved because the universities are the ones paying for their participation. We always prioritize students. So that's the reason why these virtual fairs are great, because as I told you before, students get the chance to get into the platform way in advance, do their research, ask questions. Our emails were always there. So if a student didn't know how to research, they were sending us emails, and we were suggesting them, okay, you should visit this group of universities, you should ask these questions. We had a lot of community recognition because the effort was not only for our students, because it was open. Less logistics, of course, we already talked about that. Collaboration opportunities in Guatemala and in many other countries. There, at least here, we had a Guatemalan School Counselors Association. That network grew stronger because we invited them, their students participated in the fair. So now we're a group of counselors sharing best practices and doing more collaborative activities. The instructional time, that was another worry we had, because, okay, how we're going to teach universities how to manage the platform or how to do that. Webifair took care of that. So we organized, we only sent invites for that training day, and Webifair took care of that. We had control over the event because we decided the day, the time, how long, there was a counselor's booth. So we also shared that booth with the other counselors. And for example, I was in charge of that booth for 30 minutes. So I was getting students there asking questions, where to go, what to do. There was a technological, a tech booth. Webifair was in charge of that, of course, because there's always tech questions during the event. And it was really a win-win situation for universities, because they could reach more students, more countries, a win situation for students. And of course, we had more parents attending the fair. So I think in-person visits are great. And we are still, hoping for in-person visits because it's a great thing. But in a million years, we would have dreamed to have our students exposed to more than 100 universities. We used to get, we're hoping for in-person visit, but in terms of reality, it's impossible to have 10 universities visiting every day our schools. So I think in-person visit will come back. We're hoping for that. But virtual visits are also here to stay. So it's a good way to manage and exposing more students, more and better university opportunities.
Can I just add something real quick, Susie? Everything that you were explaining and all the complicated arranging of logistics is amazing. But really, I mean, we planned both of our fairs in months, so you really don't need as much time as you would have in doing that in-person fair. And if you can start virtual, and like eventually down the road, if you decide to go in person, I think that's a lot easier because you're kind of building up your audience. And in the region, like we share university reps. And I remember my school would just like take a hard swallow when I'd come to them every year for the O2O. And they'd be like, okay, what do you need this year? And I'd ask for more money and more time and all of this. And they'd just like, oh my gosh. And then I remember going to them and I'm like, we're bringing O2O back. And they'd just like kind of be stuck in their seats waiting for all the asks. And they're like, okay, how much money do you need? What time? And they were like thinking how they were going to do this. And I was like, nope, I just need an hour at the end of the day. That's it. No money. We're doing all the work. It's fine. And they're like, an hour? Okay, that's it. Yeah. So I'm nervous if I ever go back asking for money, how that's going to work out. But it just makes everything so much simpler.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jenny, and thank you, Susie. I would totally agree to that. I think that has been one of the most benefiting thing of organizing your own event, which is at no cost and without any logistical nightmare. I think you as counselors have already been busy with dealing with students in a virtual environment right now. I think counselors who are here with us would agree to the fact that it takes more time and more efforts to counsel students virtually than it would be in person at your school. So totally agree that with that. I'm gonna quickly take a minute to kind of touch base on the approach. Since we were talking about it, and Susie and Jenny have already shared a little about it. But really, what should be your approach? Your approach should be as an event organizer to manage or own the event and decide every single detail about the event. As the technology partner, you should have someone dealing with the logistics. We can't expect schools to be dealing with logistics, technology, platforms, etc. And that is something that the technology partner can do for you. What all can they do for you? They can lead the technology front, set up all of the event technology or virtual rooms, create help desk, offer platform trainings, and all of those pieces. So you have someone to rely on for your virtual events. While as the organizer, you are really going to be the owner of this event, and you will have complete control over whom you invite at the event, how you organize it in terms of outreach, student attendance, and all the communications to universities and students. Determine the schedule. Like Jenny mentioned, she did workshops which were 2 days before the event. So she did 16 workshops in total, and then followed by the fair day. While Susie only did a fair with 163 universities. So you get to determine how you want to approach this. Um, you get to promote and publicize the event yourself. So that will be something that should be with the schools, control, and all the outreach, all the invitations to universities, all the promotions to students should be managed by the schools. That also helps you in deciding what kind of statistics you would want, what kind of analytics would you want after the event. So that is just a quick snapshot of what we wanted to share today. Is really taking the reins. Earlier, while pre-COVID era, I would say the schools would get requests from universities asking for visits. I think now it's time to flip the coin. Now it's about organizing your own event and asking universities to join that event. There have been counselors who've shared with us that they are receiving emails, multiple emails a day for a virtual visit or a virtual workshop. Here you have one day that you can dedicate for your students. You could do this quarterly for all you know. You can have pre-decided dates and build them onto the calendar and work towards that. So these are just some of the things, and I hope all of the learnings and all the benefits that we shared are really helpful. But the key takeaway is that high schools can organize and continue to engage their students through the virtual medium and not overwhelm them with an event every single day. Individual events, I would say having one dedicated day would be much better than having 10 individual sessions throughout the week. Would you agree, Jenny and Susie, on that? Super, super. So thank you very much. We'll open it for some questions in case you have any questions about whatever we shared and how to organize your events. We'll be happy to answer those. And I don't know if the chats are being monitored in case we have any questions on chats. Okay. Any thoughts? Anything that we've missed, Jenny, Susie, that was not up on the slides?
I can just add something if there's no questions.
Sure.
That's okay. How we explained it and everything we've done before sounded very complicated, but it's really not that complicated. And I think some people that I've spoken to when they're just starting this process, they're nervous on how much time is that they have to commit to it, especially since they have a full-time job as a counselor in a school. And it really isn't that bad. If you have that shared email and you're working together with a few other counselors from other schools, you can just you can kind of designate different responsibilities, and really it's probably the most time that you need to commit towards it is probably in the couple weeks of sending out the invitation, because that's when you're going to be flooded with emails, and then a few weeks right before the event. But it's totally something that can be done in 2 to 3 months of planning instead of before, which was a year of planning.
Any last thoughts? Any questions before we close the session? Super. So thank you very much once again, everyone, for joining us. And we wish you were here for us to meet in person. But hopefully next year when things settle down. Until then, we're here to help you with anything. We have a slide up with our contact information. Can we have the slide up, please? So in case you have any questions, I do see there is one question in the chat. Okay. Thank you very much for joining us. And we'll be happy to share additional information. We'll be happy to help you, set up your own virtual university fair and help you with all the planning, etc. So thank you once again, and you all have a lovely day wherever you are. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jenny.
Bye.
Thank you, Susie. Goodbye.